Look at this thin sliver of blue. It's a stretch of sea just 21 miles wide, narrower than some cities. And through that single gap squeezes about 1/5 of all the oil the world burns. Every day. Roughly 20 million barrels of it. The ships don't even get the whole width. The actual shipping lanes are about 2 miles across each way. 2 miles for 1/5 of the planet's oil. Which means one strait, one bottleneck, quietly sets the price of fuel for the entire world. Block it, and every pump on Earth feels it within days. This is the Strait of Hormuz. The most important 21 miles of water on the planet, and the story of why geography still runs the global economy. First, where is it? Tuck into the Persian Gulf, on the far side of Saudi Arabia, and you'll find a narrow doorway out to the open ocean. On the north shore, Iran. On the south shore, Oman. And pinched between them, the whole Gulf has to drain through one slender opening. Inside that Gulf sit some of the biggest oil producers ever: Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar. Trillions of dollars of energy, behind one door. And here's the thing about a door. It doesn't matter how big the house is. If everyone has to use the same narrow exit, that exit controls everything. There is no back door. For most of that oil, the only way from the wellhead to the world is straight through Hormuz. So let's put real numbers on it. How much actually moves through this gap? On a normal day, around 20 million barrels of oil and fuel. That's roughly 20% of everything the world consumes, and about a quarter of all the oil that travels by sea. And almost none of it is staying local. It's heading east, to China, India, Japan, South Korea. The factories of Asia run on oil that first squeezes through Hormuz. It's not just oil, either. A huge slice of the world's natural gas, Qatar's enormous LNG exports, sails out the very same gap. Think of it as the planet's main artery. Pinch it, even a little, and the whole body feels faint. Now the obvious question, can't they just go around? Build a pipeline, dodge the strait entirely? A little. Saudi Arabia has a giant pipeline across the desert to the Red Sea. The UAE has one to the Indian Ocean. Together they can bypass a few million barrels a day. But a few million is a fraction of 20 million. The pipes are too few, too small, and some producers, like Qatar and Kuwait, have essentially no way around at all. So if Hormuz closes, you cannot simply reroute the oil. Most of it just stops. Stuck behind the door, with nowhere to go. That's what makes a choke point a choke point. It's not that it's important. It's that there's no plan B. Now, Hormuz isn't the world's only choke point. The map of global trade is dotted with these narrow squeeze points, and every one of them is a little terrifying. Near Singapore, the Strait of Malacca funnels a huge share of Asia's trade in oil through a passage that pinches to under 2 miles wide. It's the busy cousin of Hormuz. Then there's the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb, stitching Europe to Asia. The Panama Canal, splicing 2 whole oceans together. Each one a tiny gap holding up a mountain of trade. But for oil, specifically, Hormuz is the undisputed king. No other passage on the planet squeezes this much of the world's energy through one narrow line. Which tells you something quietly unnerving about the modern world. All that global trade, all that energy, balanced on a handful of gaps just a few miles across. Here's the part that's genuinely counterintuitive. The strait barely ever closes. So why does it move prices so much, so often? Because markets don't price what's happening. They price what might happen. A single threat, a single drifting mine, a single tanker scare, and traders yank prices up to cover the risk. Economists call it a risk premium. It's the extra you pay, not for oil that's actually gone, but for oil that might vanish tomorrow. So a choke point doesn't have to actually break to cost you money. It just has to look breakable. The fear alone shows up in your fill-up, which gives whoever sits beside that strait a hand on the world's economic throat. They don't even have to squeeze. The threat is the weapon. And in 2026, this stopped being theoretical. Conflict with Iran reached the strait itself. In the first 3 months of the year, the oil flowing through Hormuz fell almost 30%, down to about 14.5 million barrels a day. The artery actually narrowed. Something like 10 to 11 million barrels a day ended up stranded, pumped, but with no clear path to a buyer. Roughly a tenth of global supply, in limbo. Everyone braced for $200 oil. Instead it climbed, scared the markets, and settled near 105. The choke point squeezed, but the world had just enough cushion to absorb it. It was the clearest proof in years. When Hormuz flinches, the entire planet's energy bill flinches with it. And if a war reaching the strait sounds unprecedented, it isn't. We have been here before. Back in the 1980s. During the long Iran-Iraq War, the Gulf turned into a shooting gallery. Both sides started attacking oil tankers, hundreds of them, in what history now calls the tanker war. It got so dangerous that the United States reflagged Kuwaiti tankers as American ships, and sent the Navy in to escort them through. Oil tankers, under armed military guard, like wartime convoys. And here's the remarkable part. Through years of missiles, sea mines, and roughly 400 ships attacked, the strait never actually closed. The oil kept moving. That's the strange resilience of Hormuz. Everyone has every reason to keep it open, even the people doing the shooting. So it bends, it scares, it spikes the price, but it flows. So who actually controls the door? Geographically, Iran sits right along the northern edge, close enough to threaten the lanes whenever tensions rise. But here's the twist that keeps it open. Iran needs the strait too. Its own oil sails through it, mostly to China. Closing the door slams it on Iran's own hand. So the strait sits in a strange, tense balance, a mutual hostage. Everyone could lose, so nobody quite pulls the trigger. They just rattle the handle. And the rest of the world? It watches a 21-mile gap on a map. And prices in the nerves every single day. It's why navies park there. Why diplomats lose sleep over it. One narrow channel, holding the calm of the whole global economy. So, a strait 21 miles wide. A fifth of the world's oil. No real way around it, and a permanent, low hum of risk baked into every barrel. We like to think the modern economy is digital, borderless, weightless. And then you remember it still runs on oil that has to fit through one specific gap between two specific countries. The most powerful real estate on Earth isn't a city or a server farm. It's a stretch of open water, and the simple, stubborn fact that there's no other way through.